Picture this. A hot afternoon in the Sahara Desert. A Boeing 737 thunders down the runway, lifting into the clear blue sky. In the cabin, 97 passengers settle in for their journey. But just seconds after leaving the ground, a deafening bang echoes through the aircraft. In the cockpit, confusion and alarm replace routine procedure. The pilots have mere moments to respond to a critical emergency. Today, we journey to the edge of the Sahara. So, stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for a harrowing journey. Because this is Final Boarding Call. Hello and welcome to Final Boarding Call. I'm your disaster-obsessed host, Alice.
And I'm Zach, here, chilling. Glad that I'm not in a hot day in whatever the heck you already said.
Yeah, we're in the Sahara Desert.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Could never.
Yeah, this is a lot. All right, before we dive in, quick reminder, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Sources. We've got the Algerian Ministry of Transport National Commission of Inquiry. You know, just a casual little document with a detailed analysis. Crisis of Confidence, the crash of Air Algérie Flight 6289 by Admiral Cloudberg on Medium. And of course, Mentor Pilot does an awesome YouTube video on this one. Full sources are in the show notes. Let's dive in. March 6th, 2003, dawned bright and clear over Tamanrasset, an ancient oasis city nestled deep in the Sahara Desert of southern Algeria. Located some 1,600 kilometers or 1,000 miles south of the capital, Algiers, Tamanrasset is among the most remote cities on Earth, which is probably why you've never heard of it. You come here not for pronunciations.
You went to the wrong spot.
This is a notoriously bad pronunciation podcast, and we're keeping that going with today's. I'm really struggling to pronounce it.
But they say it's an oasis.
It's an oasis, which means I have to go. I just can't pronounce it. Originally a military outpost built to protect trans-Sahara routes, it only began to see permanent settlement under French rule in 1915. Despite its inhospitable location in the geographical center of the Sahara, beautiful, Tamanrasset has grown to become a key transportation hub. No longer serving traditional caravans, it now serves as a major stop on the Trans-Sahara Highway, one of the only roads across the desert that is paved most of the way.
Wow. Fancy. They've got paved road.
Can you imagine
just one
paving on the sand?
Well, yeah, but you're not really paving on the sand. You are doing a lot of prep work.
It just sounds horrible. Like, I do not want to be on that job.
No, you couldn't pay me enough.
At Aguinair Airport, just outside town alongside the Trans-Sahara Highway, Air Algérie Flight 6289 was preparing for its scheduled departure to Gardaya. I hate this. Why do I do this to myself? Because this podcast would suck if I only told American stories.
Nobody wants to hear about America right now.
Gardaya, and Algiers.
Gardaya.
I'm just doing my best here. I'm so sorry, guys. I really am. I'm butchering a probably beautiful language, another culture.
She has so many strong skill sets. It's just not this.
This is not it. The aircraft was a Boeing 737-200, one of the earliest generations of this model, powered by two cigar-shaped Pratt & Whitney JT 8D engines.
Oh.
Now, let me paint you a picture of Algeria's aviation landscape in 2003. The country had only just emerged from 11 years of civil war, and that resulted in numerous high-profile terrorist attacks and aircraft hijackings.
Unfortunately, you'll get that in those civil wars.
Yeah, well, it's not great. Air Algérie's fleet was outdated and in questionable condition.
Love it.
Yep. It would be another decade before the national carrier acquired the capital to upgrade to modern airliners. So, the best that it's got right now is the Boeing 737-200, which was already showing its age. This story takes place in 2003. So, yeah. The plane was nearly full that day with 97 passengers and 6 crew members on board. Among the passengers were dozens of Algerians and a smaller number of Europeans. In the cockpit, preparing for the flight, was First Officer Fatima Yousfi. This one I do know because I really wanted to get her name right. Fatima Yousfi, who held a remarkable distinction. She was one of the first women ever to fly for an Algerian airline.
Oh, we love breakout women.
Get it, girl, having earned her professional pilot's license in October of 1997. Now, we're going to talk about her a little bit because she is a badass. In Algeria of the 1900s in particular, where women faced significant social and legal barriers, Fatima Yousfi, didn't just dream of flying, she made it happen. She fought through a male-dominated industry, overcame cultural resistance, and earned her wings at a time when many thought women had no place in the cockpit. By 2003, she had accumulated 5,219 hours of flight time.
Okay.
Including almost 1,300 hours on the Boeing 737. So, she's awesome.
What do the kids do now? Do they snap?
I don't know. Yes. No, I don't know what they do. They 6'7".
Who doesn't these days?
She was professional, skilled, and determined to prove that she belonged in the cockpit just as much as any man. Her presence on Flight 6289 represented not just her own personal achievement, but a breakthrough for women in aviation across North Africa. What happened to her that day is even more heartbreaking when you realize how competent and qualified she really was. But as flight time approached, there was a problem. Our captain is running late. So Captain Boualem Benaouisha was running late. At 48 years old, he had been flying since 1979. For everybody's sake, going forward, I'm just going to call him the captain.
Okay.
It's going to be easier for all of us, including me. At 48 years old, he had been flying since 1979 and had accumulated 10,760 flying hours, of which about 1,000 of them were on the Boeing 737 as captain.
Okay. He's got the experience.
But he has less on the Boeing 737 than our homegirl. Just want to throw that out there. However, there was something unusual about his qualifications. He was simultaneously flying as a first officer on the Boeing 767. In fact, in the 30 days before the accident, he had logged about 41 hours on the 737 and another 32 hours on the 767. So think of aircraft type ratings like specialized driver's licenses. Each type of aircraft requires its own certification because the systems, the procedures, and handling characteristics can be dramatically different.
Or even slightly different, but you have to be versed on all of them.
So true. If you're going to fly something, you better know how it works.
Yeah.
The 737 and the 767 do not share a common type rating, and flying both simultaneously raises legitimate safety questions and concerns about whether procedures from one aircraft might bleed into operations on the other, especially in an emergency, when pilots fall back on instinct. As Flight 6289 waited at the gate, First Officer Yousfi found herself alone on the flight deck. She ran through the pre-departure calculations herself, and she was about to start the pre-flight briefing when the captain finally arrived in the cockpit, with the chief flight attendant in tow. As Yousfi and the captain started up the engines, the captain kept talking to the chief flight attendant, directly violating what is called the sterile cockpit rule.
For the pre-takeoff and 10 minutes after or something like that.
And
same for descent.
I believe the sterile cockpit rule came from the episode that we covered with Stephen Colbert's father.
Oh, okay.
Where they were like chit-chatting and talking about politics and all kinds of stuff during critical times of flight.
Where nothing bad happened, but something bad happened, but the plane was fine. It's just they weren't paying attention. So they said, this isn't okay.
Correct. And this rule prohibits non-essential conversations between engine start and 10,000 feet altitude. The reason is simple. These are the most critical phases of flight where pilots need to be 100% focused on their duties. The pre-flight briefing, which should have covered emergency procedures, including what to do if an engine fails after takeoff, little spoiler alert, was captured on the cockpit voice recorder. The official investigation report states bluntly, at no time was there any dialogue or briefing related to a possible anomaly during takeoff, as required by procedures. The crew never discussed what to do if an engine failed after V1, which V1 is the point of no return. In commercial aviation, this briefing is sacred. It's when pilots discuss the flight plan, review potential emergencies, and ensure that they are mentally aligned before taking to the skies. Pilots discuss how they would handle an engine failure during takeoff, one of the most dangerous emergencies a flight crew can face. They would normally go over the correct speed and angle of climb, the proper aircraft configuration, who will fly the aircraft.
It's probably important to know who is going to be flying.
And other aspects of safety handling an engine failure. The purpose is to prime the pilots so that they can react almost instinctively if, God forbid, a failure occurred.
Instinctively and almost immediately.
Yes. You should, you never want to focus on an emergency happening, but you need to be ready for one, especially in this industry.
I feel
that's
that
why
way
we
about
do
just the world in general.
Yeah, that's why we do drivers meetings at the beginning of every single day of racing. My racing does. And I lead them, and I'm a stickler about them. At around 3:08 p.m. local time, the crew finished their calculations and they taxied to the runway. The conditions were challenging. The takeoff weight was 48,708 kilograms, which is just under the maximum allowance of 49,500. You are like sneaking it right in there. The airfield elevation was 4,500 feet.
Okay.
And the temperature was 23 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit, which for the middle of the Sahara Desert,
not bad.
That ain't bad. These factors combine to create what pilots call high density altitude, a condition where the air becomes less dense, making both engines and the wings less efficient. So think of high density altitude like trying to run up a steep hill in thin mountain air on a hot day. Everything is working against you.
Your body don't want to.
Aircraft experience something similar. They need more runway to take off. They climb more slowly, and they can't carry as much weight. Both pilots had taken off from this airport many times before, and they were familiar with these unfavorable conditions. But familiarity, as we'll see, can sometimes breed complacency. At 3:12 p.m. local time, the tower cleared flight 6289 for takeoff on runway 2. Our captain delegated responsibility for the takeoff to First Officer Yusfi, who would be the pilot flying for this leg of the flight. Yusfi pushed the throttles to takeoff power, and the plane rumbled down the runway. The familiar callouts began as the captain tracked their airspeed, 90, then 100 knots, and that's right around 104 to 115 miles per hour. And seconds later, he calls out, V1, rotate.
We going.
So, V1 means there is no turning back, and rotate means let's pull back on the controls and let's lift that nose, the nose wheel, off the runway. So, First Officer Yusfi pulled back on the controls and the 737 lifted off the runway. Gear up, she ordered. But before the captain could reach for the landing gear lever, disaster. Inside the left engine, a catastrophic failure was about to unfold. Deep in the engine's hottest section, fatigue cracks had developed in the first stage nozzle guide vanes of the high-pressure turbine. Did you hate that I just said vanes?
No, it was just a whole lot of verbiage for something that in my head shouldn't be that complicated.
Yeah, so let me explain what all that meant, because Zach's right. That was a lot of words. So the nozzle guide vane is a stationary component that directs the flow of scorching hot gases from the combustion chamber into the spinning turbine blades.
So it's the exhaust manifold.
Think of it as an exhaust manifold, or if you're not a car person, the nozzle on a garden hose that directs the water flow. Except instead of water, it's directing gases at temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius. Cool. Which is 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
That is hot.
It's basically hell inside a jet engine. The investigation found that the cracks were caused by thermal fatigue, the kind of damage that develops slowly over thousands of hours of operation. As the engine strained under the maximum takeoff power, a large section of one of these guide vanes broke away.
Yeah, that sounds accurate. People really undersell the hot and cold aspect of even just cars.
Yeah.
Something that is getting very hot and then it cools down overnight, or in the winter it gets to negatives and these things break. Plastic gets brittle, metal will just expand and contract and crack. And
yes. And as we covered earlier, this airline
did not have brand new things.
They are not, and they're not taking amazing care of the things that they have.
They said this thing's a Honda Civic, it should be fine.
Oh, it was not. The failure triggered a catastrophic chain reaction. As the broken vane fragment struck other components, it caused a domino effect of destruction within both the high pressure and low pressure turbines. This reminds me of when a turbo explodes and it goes
clank, clank,
the
clank.
engine side instead of the exhaust side.
Oh, yeah.
And then it just is like, just
things
destruction.
Break.
Ground up bits of the turbines spewed out onto the runway behind the aircraft as the engine began to lose power rapidly. A loud thumping noise rang out from the left engine, audible not only to the pilots, but even to the ground crews and the people in the control tower.
Ooh.
This was a loud failure. The plane immediately started yawing to the left due to the sudden thrust imbalance, with the right engine still producing full power.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. So our first officer, Yusfi, began exclaiming, "In the name of God," in Arabic, which I did write down, but as a sign of respect to another culture, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. And then she said, "What's going on?" At this critical moment, she needed to immediately initiate the engine failure on takeoff procedure, which all pilots should have memorized. Reduce the pitch angle to maintain V2, which is the takeoff safety speed. Raise the landing gear. Increase thrust on the remaining engine, and use the rudder to control the yaw. There you go. You guys are all now ready for an emergency situation. But before she could do any of these things, before either pilot had even identified the left engine as the source of the problem, our captain made a fateful decision.
The captain or the first officer who was flying?
The captain.
Who wasn't in charge of anything at that moment.
Who was not supposed to be the one flying. He said, "Let go, let go." And the investigation interpreted that as him wanting to take control of the airplane.
I would assume so, yeah.
The official report, see, we don't know because there was no pre-flight emergency discussion that we caught on the voice recorder.
No, but just assumption, it would make sense to me when you're saying let go. It's, it seems obvious, but you can't, that doesn't hold up in court. I get it.
Well, we're going to see how weird this conversation gets. The official report specifically notes that the captain took over the controls without any request from the co-pilot or any use of the standard terminology for handing over the controls. And that last part was a quote directly from the official report. This was quite possibly the worst decision that he could have made. In such critical situations, the last thing a crew should do is execute an unannounced control handover.
Well, it just sounds that the plane is already going out of control. So you're going to sacrifice a second or two to pass off controls to somebody else?
Correct.
No.
Correct. That's exactly it, Zach. So Yusfi was hand flying the plane at the moment, and she had the instinctive feel for what it was doing.
Yeah.
So she says, "I've let go," and she relinquishes control. "Let go," the captain repeated, apparently confused or unsatisfied.
Let me repeat that. "I have let go."
And now Yusfi asks in response to that, "Gear up or..." And then it just kind of like ... But the captain didn't reply. He seemed focused on trying to fly a normal climb profile.
Oh, as if she was just butchering the takeoff.
As if she was like a woman and as such
doesn't know how to do things.
She couldn't even properly take off from a runway. Oh, man. Holding the pitch altitude at roughly 18 degrees, which is appropriate for a normal two-engine takeoff, but is extremely dangerously steep for a single-engine situation. With a failed engine, he needed to keep the pitch angle around 12 degrees to avoid losing airspeed.
Yeah.
As the plane's one remaining engine struggled to push the aircraft up at such a steep angle, their speed began to fall rapidly. And then something even more catastrophic happened. Boeing's performance reconstruction, conducted using the flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder, and the wreckage examination, concluded that the thrust on the right engine, the working engine, was significantly reduced during the climb. The exact cause of that reduction couldn't be definitively established, but the implication is chilling. The pilots may have misidentified which engine had failed.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense for that situation.
There have been several documented cases in aviation history where pilots have shut down or reduced power of the functioning engine during an emergency, leaving them with little or no thrust at all. Meanwhile, as Flight 6289 reached its brief peak altitude, First Officer Yusfi keyed her microphone. "We have a small problem," she radioed to the tower, who knew they had a problem because they had heard.
And they radioed back, "I think it's not a small problem."
Yeah. The captain still seemed focused on the controls, "Let go, remove your hand," he insisted. "I've let go," she replied. "Remove your hand." "I've let go."
So he's not even willing to look over and see that she's not holding it anymore?
Suddenly, the aircraft's airspeed dropped low enough to trigger the stick shaker, which is a device that vibrates the control column to warn pilots of an impending stall. When an aircraft flies too slowly, the smooth airflow over the wings breaks down and the aircraft loses lift. It's like trying to keep a kite in the air when you're walking. Eventually, the kite will just fall. And seconds later, unable to continue climbing so steeply with degraded thrust, the plane stalled. And it stalled at the height of only 400 feet.
Oh, wow.
So they had almost no room to recover. "Don't sink," the ground proximity warning system called out, its automated voice cutting through the chaos. "Please," shouted First Officer Yusfi. And our captain continues to yell, "Remove your hand." At this point, there was nothing either pilot could do. The only way to recover from this stall is to sacrifice altitude for airspeed, but you're 400 feet from the ground.
You have no altitude to sacrifice.
There's nothing. Suddenly, at a height of 335 feet above the ground, both black boxes stopped recording.
Oh.
The investigation determined that this was due to a loss of electrical power, but here's an unsettling detail from the official report. The commission was unable to identify the precise cause of that power loss. It happened in an unusual situation a very short time before impact, and the exact mechanism that killed the recorders remains, to this day, unexplained.
Well, I hate that.
What the pilot said in the final moments will never be known. But seconds later, with its nose pitched high, its right wing hanging low, Flight 6289 slammed into the desert just past the end of the runway and burst into flames.
All that fuel.
Upon witnessing the accident, controllers immediately activated the emergency alarm. Firefighters rushed to the scene, arriving about 3.5 minutes after the crash. The main fuselage was largely intact. Only the cockpit, tail, and wings had broken away. But the intense fire triggered by the plane's full fuel load, as Zach pointed out, had already rendered survival inside of the cabin essentially impossible. The plane had slid across the Trans-Sahara Highway and come to rest a few hundred meters further on, totally consumed in flames. Those passengers, who may have survived the relatively low-speed impact, most likely perished within seconds from the fire.
The worst way to go, too.
It was then that rescuers made an astonishing discovery. One man clinging to life, not inside the plane, but in the sand.
Ejected.
Well back from where the main wreckage came to rest. Against all odds, there was a survivor. And this survivor was a 28-year-old Algerian soldier named Youssef Jilali, who had been returning to his barracks after spending leave in Tamanrasset. He had been seated in the very last row of the aircraft, and he was thrown from the plane when the tail section broke away on impact. Firefighters found him lying unconscious with weak vital signs, and ambulances rushed him to the hospital in critical condition. But despite his dire state, within hours, his condition stabilized, and he began to recover.
Wowzers.
He was the only survivor out of 103 people on board. So, how did one man survive when 102 others perished? The answer lies in an extraordinary combination of circumstances that defied all probability. First, Jilali had been seated in the absolute rear of the aircraft, And when the plane hit the ground, the impact forces caused the tail section to break away from the main fuselage. While this breakaway was violent and extremely dangerous, it also meant that his section of the aircraft was separated from the main wreckage before the fuel ignited.
Which is just luck.
Second, and perhaps most remarkably, according to his own statement to investigators, he had not fastened his seatbelt during takeoff.
See, I knew that was key.
This is documented in the official report, and this violation of basic flight safety protocol, something
Saved his life.
Flight attendants remind passengers about every day, turned out to save his life. In this one situation.
Just saying.
When the aircraft struck the ground and the tail section separated, he was unrestrained from his seatbelt and he just went, goodbye. He was ejected. It's pretty incredible. And what's really crazy to think about is that the violent forces should have killed him. He got ejected from an airplane crash.
Yeah, I'd picture when the plane touches down with no landing gear, he's probably still 20-something feet in the air.
It's unreal. It's truly a 1 in a million chance of survival. And the next day, against all medical expectations, he regained consciousness in the hospital. And doctors reported that while his injuries were serious, including multiple fractures and internal injuries, they were
full recovery.
They were not life-threatening. And after months of hospitalization, he actually returned to military service.
Well, I'm glad that there's a silver lining.
I know. It is a little...
These stories are hard when a lot of people die, but...
This one's extra crazy to me because it's like all of the odds. It's like the Swiss cheese, but reverse of him surviving.
Yeah, Swiss cheese of good.
Yeah, like all of these crazy things had to happen in order for him to be able to survive this accident. News of the sole survivor quickly spread across Algeria and around the world. In a disaster of such magnitude, where an entire aircraft and nearly everyone aboard had been lost, the existence of even one survivor was a glimmer of hope. For the families of the 102 victims, however, this just was an absolutely devastating story. The investigation would soon reveal how preventable this disaster could have been. Responsibility for investigating the accident fell to a special commission of inquiry established by the Algerian Ministry of Transport. Since Algeria didn't have a dedicated aircraft accident investigation agency, the commission was led by the sitting Inspector General of the Ministry of Transport. The investigation faced significant challenges from the start. The flight data recorder was very outdated, recording only 6 basic parameters.
Eek.
Time, pressure, altitude, indicated airspeed, magnetic heading, vertical acceleration, and VHF radio transmissions. And that is not a lot. Modern day one records...
Yeah, it's recording 100 things.
Yeah, you toot in your seat, and it's like, he tooted. It'll record every single thing that happens. Yeah.
It's like your Apple Watch at 1:49, you farted.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So crucial details like control column forces, throttle positions, individual engine parameters, and pitch attitude were not recorded. To reconstruct what the airplane was actually doing, Boeing engineers had to run sophisticated optimization analysis using the limited FDR data combined with the cockpit voice recorder sounds and the physical evidence from the crash site. And it didn't help that the final moments of all of those were missing.
Yeah. Although it does feel a lot like, I don't remember where in math it was, something with geometry or whatever, but you already have X equals. You just have to build the equation to get there.
Is it like the shadow is 22 feet long. The sun is at this angle.
Yeah.
How
this
tall
person
is
at 8 feet 1 inch?
Yeah, there you go. The commissioner's findings confirmed what witnesses had observed. The left engine had failed due to thermal fatigue cracks in the first stage nozzle guide vanes of the high-pressure turbine. The cracks had developed over time as the engine accumulated thousands of flight cycles. And here's a detail that should concern everyone, so buckle up.
The other one was also real bad.
How did you know?
Well, I'm guessing those engines were installed at the same time, so they've got the same amount of hours on them.
Yes, Zach, you're exactly right. They found fatigue cracking in the other engine, so it was on its way to failure, although it wasn't quite there yet. The official report itself noted that Air Algérie had been systematically inspecting reconditioned parts because of repeated problems with this particular component, and that 5 to 10% of parts received were found to be out of specification. Yikes. However, the commission focused most of its attention on the human factors that turned a mechanical failure into a fatal accident. First, the incomplete pre-flight briefing meant that the crew was not at all prepared for emergency scenarios. The sterile cockpit violation during engine start showed a casual attitude toward safety. And no, we take safety very seriously.
At least one of us does.
I do.
Yeah.
And the abrupt control handover after the engine failure, without using the standard terminology, without any request from the first officer, it just created confusion.
Yeah.
The official report's language of this is striking. It cites, quote, inadequate crew resource management, end quote, a complete, quote, absence of teamwork after the engine failure, and a problematic dynamic where the captain had to manage an emergency situation which he had not had time to analyze completely. The report continues. He did not rely on the co-pilot, whom he simply asked on several occasions to let go of the controls. So, the captain's behavior from the moment the emergency began, his very first priority when something went wrong, was not to diagnose the problem, to follow emergency procedures. It was just to take control. He demanded that she release the controls, even after she had confirmed multiple times that she had let go of the controls.
I already did.
She was not touching the controls. Her hands were probably by her face. Like, I am not touching these mother effing controls, sir. This reaction only makes sense if he believed that she was incapable of handling the situation, that she, not the engine failure, was the most immediate source of danger.
Mm-hmm.
There was no evidence to support this belief because this girl
knew how to fly.
In fact, she had more hours on the Boeing 737 than he did, and she had been following procedures correctly up to that point, calling for gear up, attempting to manage the emergency. It wasn't until he came in and mucked everything up that the situation went so wrong.
And, I want to hate on him real bad for it. And maybe that's just because of the dynamic at play here.
I know.
But I also, in an emergency situation, I also struggle with releasing control. So I probably would also want to take over. However, in my mind, I want to tell myself that in that situation, the person that's there is not also just as capable. But in this instance, he had someone more capable than him. So he was just being a little sexist there.
I believe, allegedly, it is my belief, completely separate from the reports, allegedly, whatever, please do not sue me. But yeah, this guy was a gender asshole. He was a total misogynist. It's unproven.
'Tis unproven.
It's unproven. I'm only speculating based on the facts.
I also know that in an emergency situation, I also want to be in
Zachary,
control.
You can't do that.
I feel it. It resides with me.
No.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I would do it.
No.
But I would want to.
Okay, well, you can want to all you want to. However, in an emergency, you follow whatever the emergency procedures that you discussed prior to the plane taking off
But they
follow.
They didn't.
Correct.
They didn't discuss.
Yeah. Wild incompetence.
Guys, I think this is our last episode. She and I are fighting.
So this becomes even more tragic when you consider that the pilots may never have properly identified what was wrong with the aircraft. So that's
Yes.
like a whole nother.
Yeah, that's a whole other piece that
Yeah.
the engine that should have been at full thrust was
Yeah.
at partial. Did they say where the other engine was left, the one that did fail on the left? Was that one still at full power?
No, I don't have that information. But what I can confirm is that on the cockpit voice recorder, there is never a moment where either pilot mentioned the engines. They do not call for engine out emergency procedures. No one even announces or discusses the failure.
Okay, so they might not have known.
Yep. So such confusion could have arisen from a botched control handover, which we obviously had, and it left both crew members unsure of their roles.
Neither of them had enough time to really figure out what was going on because precious time was wasted with a handover rather than the other guy just looking into what was going on.
And Boeing's performance reconstruction concluded that thrust on the right engine, which is the working engine, was significantly reduced during the climb. So the exact cause of the weird right engine, the working engine, not being at full thrust, Boeing was never able to fully, and the investigators were never able to fully point down why, but it strongly suggests that the pilots either misidentified the failed engine or they simply lost track of the throttles.
Yeah, they were by something else and they just didn't think of that. So it could have just been full panic mode and things slipped through the cracks.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. So the Commission of Inquiry issued 4 recommendations. 1, Air Algérie and other operators ensure their crew resource management training programs heighten awareness of strict control handover procedures. No more just like you take off and it's just like, whatever, we'll just feel it. The Civil Aviation Directorate set up an organization to inspect training program compliance. That Air Algérie and other operators establish a flight safety program with systematic flight data analysis, and most importantly, that the Ministry of Transport set up a permanent organization for the investigation of civil aviation accidents and incidents. And while these recommendations were appropriate, Algeria has historically lacked a fully independent accident investigation body. Investigations continue to be handled by commissions under the Ministry of Transport. Like today.
Yeah.
That's happening now. Woof. All right. This crash serves as a stark reminder of how quickly things can go wrong in aviation and how critical proper training and procedures are during these emergencies. For the aviation industry, this accident highlighted several key safety lessons. Pre-flight briefings, do them, period. The Boeing 737 is designed to fly safely on one engine. If you don't, fuck it up.
Yeah, you just have to be very aware, and it has to be second nature reactions and understandings of what's going on.
Yes, this flight should have made it back to the airport. They were right there.
Yeah. And every pilot has trained for this exact scenario. That is kind of the point of knowing these procedures.
Yes. Yep. Among the 102 victims, of course, was First Officer Fatima Yousfi, whose pioneering role as one of Algeria's first female commercial pilots made her loss particularly significant. She had really broken through barriers that few women had even attempted. And it really makes me devastated when I learned about this story and researching it. It just is so shitty. So in the end, the desert wind still blows across the crash site, carrying with it the memory of 102 people whose final journey ended in the moments just after it began. Their legacy lives on in the safety lessons learned from this preventable tragedy. And Zach, that is our story for today.
Well, loss is always unfortunate. Good things come from the loss, luckily. Rules are created, procedures, and just understandings of what happened. And all that information gets passed along so that hopefully one day we can be completely accident free.
There's no way.
No, I don't. But it is the goal. Every accident is supposed to be able to stop other accidents. So
I think that
there will always be little freak things that happen. You can't stop everything.
What is it? To err is to be human. To be human is to err.
Sure, if you say so.
Wow. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Also, email us, finalboardingcallpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you and send you a sticker.
We got a message on the Instagram a little while back. I was so excited, and then you responded to it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, she took my thunder, guys.
Join us next time when we will be exploring another transportation disaster story. Until then, remember to stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for the unexpected, because not every trip reaches its final
destination.
Final destination.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.